Hello and welcome back to Fatboss TV. Today we're looking at the second encounter in the Battle of Dazar'alor instance, which is Grong the Jungle Lord.
Yes, this big ass monkey is a short fight with bursty raid damage and high tank damage, so it's probably safe to assume that this is going to be the patchwork fight of the instance. To defeat this encounter you have to manage the boss's rage, otherwise the fight will likely become unhealable. Let's jump straight into it.
So over time the boss gains rage, and as you get Grong lower, he'll begin to gain it faster and faster. At 100% rage, he'll cast Tantrum. This channel deals large raid damage whilst also applying a stacking dot that increases the damage you take from the Tantrum cast. Each 25% of rage during his Tantrum applies a single stack of the dot. If you allow the boss to get to 100% energy every single time, your healers are unlikely to have the cooldowns to cover it. As a result, you have to force the boss to cast Tantrum early. Throughout the fight, robots will spawn around the edges of the room. The robots do not attack anyone directly and instead spam casts into the boss, giving him 10 rage each time. It's really important you make sure this is interrupted. When the ads die, they will explode, dealing damage to anyone within 15 yards of them, whilst also knocking back players. Also, this will buff the boss, so you need to make sure the boss is always 15 yards away from them. At the same time, they'll also drop a core on the ground. A player can pick up the core to give them an extra action button that can be used on the boss. This cast steals a flat 5% of the boss's health and forces him to spend the rest of his rage to cast Tantrum. The buff that you gain from the orb lasts around a minute or so you can hold on to the orb and time it for exactly when you want the boss to begin his Tantrum cast. Generally we found it best just to simply use the orb whenever the boss was above 50 rage. If you do that throughout the fight, the boss will only ever typically cast Tantrum long enough for you to get 2 ticks, but there were some moments where you would get 3 ticks as the boss was slightly above 75 rage. For these harder hitting ones, this is where you'd probably want to start using your healing cooldowns.
So whilst killing off the ads as fast as you possibly can so that you can use the orb to keep the Tantrum cast manageable, there is of course other stuff going on. For tanks you've got a combo to deal with. This combo is different every single time and it's vital you understand it, otherwise you could be one shot. So the combo consists of 4 attacks. The first 3 are random, each cast could either be a smash or a bite. It could also consist of only 3 bites, but we do not think it could be 3 smashes, which makes sense because the bestial smash deals a flat amount of physical damage to the tank and applies a debuff which increases the damage you take from that ability by 500%. So yeah, if you have to deal with more than one of them at any given time, you'll probably get one shot. The bite that we was talking about, the rending bite, applies a physical damage dot for 10 seconds and of course this can stack. So as you can imagine, with each cast being random, this can get pretty nasty. If you have 3 bites in a row, one of the tanks is going to have to take at least 2 stacks of the dot and will probably need to use a cooldown to be healthy. The best way we found to deal with these 3 casts is just to react quickly and taunt based off the previous cast. If a single tank is about to take more than one of the smashes or bites, simply taunt and that will make it manageable. Just hope that it's not going to be the same ability 3 times in a row, because if it is, like I said earlier, be ready to use a large cooldown or some externals. Now at the end of the 3 casts, he will always cast Bestial Throw. This deals physical damage to you over 5 seconds and afterwards you're thrown at a random player in the raid, dealing drop off damage to the entire raid. If you're targeted, you do receive a debuff to let you know that the tank is about to be thrown at you, so during that 5-second cast, move as far from the raid as you can just to reduce the incoming damage. Now on top of this, throughout the fight, the boss will cast Ferocious Roar on a timer. This cast deals a small amount of damage to the raid, but it also fears anyone who is not near another raid member for 5 seconds. Because of this, and because we didn't really have any timers, we just decided to remain stacked throughout the entire fight to counter this. This does make the other 2 mechanics that are in the fight a little bit more annoying to deal with. The boss will cast Reverberating Slam on a random nearby melee player. This deals a large amount of physical damage and leaves behind a patch that will explode shortly afterwards that deals much larger damage. To reduce incoming raid damage, you want to spread into some groups in melee to prevent all of you from being hit by this. Range players will be targeted by Flying Ape Wranglers with Seeker missiles. When these hit the player, it deals damage to anyone within 10 yards whilst also leaving behind a patch of fire that also deals ticking damage. Just like melee, we opted to have multiple groups to keep the general incoming damage low. However, on a second test, we instead used a weak aura that would track exactly who's being targeted by the missile, giving them time to move out and drop the patch away from the raid. The only downside is that the missile and the roar do sometimes overlap, which can cause the player to be feared if they're not quick to return back to the raid. That being said, on the most recent test, the weak aura wasn't functioning properly, so we're not entirely sure if you're going to be able to do this. But overall, that's the encounter. For the most part, it seems all about managing the tantrum and making sure you never see 100% rage cast.